Bucko the Dragon, a story by Jordan Peterson, aged 11 3/4. Written by Michael Blackwater. Once upon a time there lived a dragon called Bucko. He lived, as was expected of him, in a lair under a mountain. As was expected of him, he was a ferocious, fire-breathing monster, hoarder of treasure, devourer of beasts, despoiler of every innocent settled state of humanity. But he wasn't always like that. In the time before that once, Bucko lived with his parents. Well-fed, playful and content, young Bucko could have lived with his parents forever. But his parents had other ideas. Much as they loved him, they decided to set him up in his own lair, just to get him out of theirs. "Now look, boy," said Bucko's father, "you can't live your whole life with us. Your mother and I won't be around forever. You have to grow up and find your place in the world. Hunt your own food, protect yourself from humans, and build your own treasure bed. Guard your treasure. A dragon's treasure is a dragon's life." As he said this, he gave Bucko's mother an affectionate nuzzle. "Why is a dragon's treasure a dragon's life?" Bucko asked. "Let me tell you a story about that," said his father. A story. Bucko loved stories, any stories. He was always happy listening to his parents' stories of their youth and stories of the family. Best of all were the books, the stories of the elder dragons and the great deeds that made them lords of the earth. Bucko loved those stories best. He was a bookworm at heart. And so there was Bucko, alone in his own cosy lair, at the base of his own mountain, with his own small treasure bed to sleep on, learning to grow up. Learning to grow up was fun. When he was hungry, he would hunt a wild goat or a sheep. Easy prey, always looking around but not up. They never knew what hit them when Bucko fell headlong flaming from the sky. When he felt like flying, he would go flying above the forests and up the cliffs and down the valleys and over the plains, flying high, higher, pausing, falling into a spinning dive straight for earth, falling closer, close, pulling up to glide above the ground before pulling back to crash hind claws first among a platoon of imaginary knights, an elder dragon crushing one after another under his mighty forepaws. Tiny, arrogant, pitiful creatures, daring to defy him, fireflies in the presence of the sun. One day, Bucko was in his lair practicing a new tail whip technique to scatter his enemies when he turned and saw a knight was halfway into his lair. Bucko's world froze. The knight, now seen, stopped briefly, then advanced behind its shield, slowly, steadily, forward. Bucko was terrified. The knight was enormous. It was half Bucko's size. Something within him took a deep breath and shot all the fire it could muster at the knight. His fire spent, gasping, he looked at the shield, standing alone and upright in front of him. "I did it," he thought, more in relief than elation. A helm poked up and a sword snaked out, and the shield rose and advanced, slowly, steadily, forward. The thing had no eyes, just one dark slit staring at him. Bucko scrabbled backwards into the wall of his lair, eyes darting around for an escape. But there was none. Wherever Bucko turned, the knight would shift and cut him off, getting closer, close. There was no way out. A gout of flame enveloped the knight. Twitching, popping, hissing, it collapsed onto its shield. Behind the smoke and the flames, Bucko saw the figure of his father. Relief eased the tension in his limbs, and he stuttered slowly to the floor, breathing heavily. "Did it get you?" his father asked. "It was huge," Bucko gasped. "Did it get you?" his father repeated. "No," Bucko replied. "No, Why was it so big?" "Most nights are that big. How many times have I warned you? Humans are dangerous. And this one wasn't alone." "There are more?" Bucko said. "There were more of them, outside," said his father. "But I chased them away. I didn't realize this one had gone on ahead." "More of them outside?" "Come outside," said his father, turning and loping purposefully through the entrance to Bucko's lair. Bucko followed him, still shaking a little. Outside he saw streaks of blackened earth and a few discarded weapons. "Humans are dangerous," his father continued. They may be smaller and weaker, but they're fast, numerous, and cunning, and they get more inventive every day. You must be vigilant. You must guard yourself and your treasure." "Why do they do it?" asked Bucko. "Steal our treasure? Kill us?" "It's what they do. To steal a dragon's treasure is a human's purpose. That's just how it is," his father replied. "Why?" Bucko asked. "It wasn't always like that. In the books they worshipped us." "They worshipped us once," said his father, "and in return we gave them gifts, the gift of fire and the gift of the word. They used these gifts to wage war on us. But in the books they were small. Dragons were bigger back then, or humans smaller, perhaps. How many times have I told you about those engravings? I've fought with knights many times. I've told you stories about them." "I thought you were exaggerating," said Bucko, embarrassed. His father looked at him. Bucko looked away, unable to meet his eye. "Perhaps you're right," said his father eventually. "Perhaps I made it sound too much like fun, like a game." He paused. "Well, now we both know better." He paused again and looked silently across the plain. "I won't let it happen again," said Bucko. "You were lucky this time," said his father. "Your mother and I have been taking turns to keep an eye on you, but we won't always be there." "I won't let it happen again," Bucko repeated. His father looked at him. "You will be vigilant and guard your treasure against anyone who approaches?" "Yes," said Bucko, "even if it's only good for sleeping on." "Only good for—" The old dragon cut himself off. "Only good for sleeping on," he said eventually. "The treasure bed," said Bucko, hesitantly. He looked up at his father. The brief ferocity had settled, and there was now a stern but not unkind look in the older dragon's eyes. "Only good for sleeping on," the older dragon repeated, the look in his eyes now thoughtful, with the hint of a smile. "I think you need to read some of our books again. Think about our traditions. I'll give you a couple for your lair." "Books?" said Bucko eagerly. "For my lair? Me?" "Yes, boy," said his father. "Read them and think about them, but remember, you mustn't let your guard down again." "I won't," Bucko replied, all eagerness now. "Guard your treasure." "I will." "A dragon's treasure is a dragon's life," his father intoned. "Repeat that for me." "A dragon's treasure is a dragon's life," Bucko repeated. His father smiled. "Good boy." And so Bucko read, vigilantly. A dragon's treasure is a dragon's life. Bucko still couldn't understand why the pile of shiny things he slept on was that important, or why humans wanted to steal it, but he had promised his father he would learn. The dead knight's scorched helm and shield and armour were piled in a corner of Bucko's lair, but the sword, shining, elegant, and with the gemstone embedded in the crossguard, was now on Bucko's treasure bed. He flew further afield, no longer in play, but to hunt and to watch for danger. The few humans he saw were always fleeing, and no knights came near his lair. Until one day, Bucko, returned from a hunt, was reading when he heard a distant but unmistakable clank. He left the book on the floor and prowled as silently as he could to the entrance. There was another clank, closer this time. Bucko, still in the shadows, waited. Hello?" said a voice. Bucko didn't move. Who was out there? Why would a knight announce its presence? "Hello? Is anyone there?" the voice repeated. Bucko tensed, then thundered forward and reared up, ready to flame. He found himself looking down at a sheep. No, a knight. A single trembling knight with a stunned ovine look on its face. Bucko was so surprised he stopped and just stared. It looked like a knight, but for some reason it didn't feel like one. The dragon and the knight watched each other. Bucko was baffled, but the knight was terrified. Bucko was enormous, 4 times the knight's size. "What do you want?" Bucko asked. The knight continued to tremble. "What do you want?" Bucko asked again. The look on the knight's face now reminded Bucko of goat, bulging eyes and jaw flapping soundlessly. "Tell me," Bucko ordered. awful weather we've been having, isn't it? Squeaked the knight. Bucko glanced at the clear blue sky. I suppose so, he said finally. Yes, terrible. But what can you do about it? I suppose you just have to make the best of it, said the knight. Bucko didn't know what to say to this. That's a fine shield you have there, he said. Do you think so? Said the knight, tilting the shield horizontal so it resembled the tea tray it in fact was. The blacksmith's apprentice made it for me. I didn't think he liked me very much, but when I told him what I wanted, he was so helpful. What did you want? Bucko asked, somewhat curious now. To be a dragon slayer, so... The knight stopped as his mind caught up to his words. A dragon slayer, said Bucko. The knight had resumed his wordless trembling. Tell me more, Bucko said. The knight continued to tremble. Speak, Bucko ordered. All the boys in my village are dragon slayers. They all told me so. I wanted to be one too. All the boys in your village? Bucko asked, curious again. They told me you can't be a man until you've slain a dragon. I said I wanted to be a man, so they all helped prepare me. They were very helpful. So you're here to slay me with that? Said Bucko, looking at the cast iron fire poker in the knight's hand. No, said the knight. You're bigger than they said you'd be. Quite a lot bigger, actually. They said you'd be the size of a dog. What sort of stories do humans tell of dragons? Bucko asked. They say you have lots of treasure that you guard, the knight replied. Well, that's true, said Bucko. Is it true dragons devour princesses? Asked the knight eagerly. No, that's a bit old-fashioned. I prefer beef, Bucko replied. Oh, so you don't have a princess I could rescue? I'm afraid not. That's a shame, said the knight. I was hoping you'd have one. A brave and chivalrous knight performs great deeds to win the hand of a beautiful princess. Those are my favourite stories. How idiotic, thought Bucko, although he said nothing. His parents hadn't raised him to be a rude dragon. Where have you journeyed from? He asked, changing the subject to something interesting. A village some leagues from here, said the knight, half turning to gesture at the landscape and briefly revealing the handle of a saucepan behind his head. And you've travelled all this way to slay me, rescue a princess, take my treasure, and return all the way back home? Yes, said the knight. So what are you going to do? I don't know, said the knight. He looked forlorn. Bucko felt a bit sorry for him, but mostly he felt bored. He had recently eaten, and it didn't feel right to kill this knight anyway. He just wanted the knight to go away so he could get back to his book. How about this? Bucko said. Why don't you go back and tell them you're a dragon slayer? I'll give you a piece of treasure to show them. The knight looked up at Bucko. His expression had changed from fear and trembling to awe and worship. Bucko felt this was appropriate, and he swelled at the thought of his own might and magnanimity. Stay there, he said. He went back inside his lair, selected a small golden cup, returned and placed it in front of the knight. You are now a dragon slayer, he said. The knight, weapons discarded, held the cup in his hands, gratitude shining from his face. Remember, said Bucko, I am now dead, and all my treasure is gone. Yes, sir, said the knight. So there's no need to return here, or for anyone to come here again. Yes, sir, said the knight. Good. Now be on your way. Yes, sir, said the knight. He gathered his weapons, gave Bucko a bow, which Bucko again felt appropriate, turned and walked away, almost skipping in his eagerness. That's that taken care of, thought Bucko, and he returned to his book. Bucko continued to grow. He read, he hunted, he watched and listened. And a good thing too, because for some reason more and more humans began to turn up, much to Bucko's annoyance. Most could be scared away, but some he had to fight. The now familiar slow shields, clanking slowly forward, clanking slowly around. Out in the open they were easier, where Bucko could move freely and fly if necessary. He added their swords to his treasure bed and heaped the armour away from his lair so it wouldn't get in the way or spoil his view. He learned more of humans, how they moved and how they sounded and how they smelled. If the wind was right, he could smell humans before he could see or hear them. He was getting along fine. Until one morning. Bucko was reading a book when a shout of "Beast" echoed into his lair. He leaped up, tensed and ready. Not a sound and not a smell had reached him, but as he snaked towards the entrance, the knight was standing in plain sight on the lip of his lair. A new knight. Not a clanking slow shield. This one didn't hide behind layers of metal. And Bucko could see his eyes, holding not fear, not awe, but contempt. His shield wasn't a fang-thick oblong chunk, but smaller and round and shining. Good for a treasure bed, that one, thought Bucko. Shame it'll get scorched. He took a small breath and lumbered forward before giving the knight a short burst. But the knight wasn't there. He was standing, unsinged, next to the blackened patch of ground, smiling now. "Is that all you've got, beast?" he shouted. Bucko, angry now, loped forward, and there was a hiss and a thud, and shards of rock and earth rained on him as two slow shields with spears closed in from either side. Bucko snarled and backed off, keeping his eyes on the three knights. "That's it, beast. Back in your lair. Make it easy for us," said the smiling knight. He wasn't wrong. Bucko lunged at the nearest slow shield, dodging the spear thrust aimed at his head and swiping, smashing the knight backward and off balance. Bucko lumbered forward to finish the job, and a ballista bolt crashed into his left shoulder, knocking him onto his side. Roaring with pain, he loped and flapped and took flight just as a slow shield's spear stabbed his belly. He circled out, around and away, the cheers of the men fading with each frantic flap of his wings. Bucko landed on the back of his mountain, resting his body against it, anchoring himself with three clawed limbs while his left foreleg dangled in the most painless position he could manage. He rested his head against the mountainside and breathed, slowly. He was safe here. Knights couldn't climb. He could wait until they went away. They would steal his treasure bed, but so what? He could always sleep on the floor, or perhaps find himself a new lair. How would he explain this to his parents? Explain? The books. Dragon books are made of gold. They would steal his books. Bucko looked at his shoulder. The head of the bolt had gone through his scales, and one of the barbs was lodged underneath. He couldn't reach it with his right forepaw. He would have to tear it out with his jaws. Bucko tried, but sharp fangs and smooth gums couldn't get purchase on the spine of the bolt. He stopped and thought. Jet black blood was oozing from the wound and running in thick, viscous rivulets down his foreleg. He grasped the bolt head in his jaws and levered, slowly. Up and down, weeping in pain as the barb peeled the scales off his shoulder before popping out. He spat the bolt down the mountainside and took some deep breaths. Bucko thought for a second. They would expect him to come back, to fly in and flame them, but he had no other choice. They would expect him to glide in low and try to surprise them from the side, but they might not expect to dive down the cliff above his lair. He inspected the bleeding wound in his belly. It didn't seem serious. He gave his left foreleg a test. He could move it with pain, and it could take some of his weight, but not much. He saw his approach in his mind's eye. He took off, flew high, higher, paused, and plummeted down and onward fast, faster, across the plateau that would keep him out of sight, tilting down and clearing the edge and headlong down the sheer face of the cliff. They saw him a moment too late, and Bucko flamed a slow shield from above before pulling out of the dive and gliding on and around and back. Men were struggling to reposition the ballista, and Bucko caught them with another burst, engulfing man and machine. He pulled up and around. No more men in sight. He landed hind claws first with a crash outside his lair and limped inside as fast as he could manage. A slow shield was waiting for him in the enclosed space, back to the wall, holding ground, spear out, behind his shield. Bucko glanced and saw all his books were gone. He roared and limped forward and swiped, smashing the slow shield into the wall, but not before he got a stab in the chest. He limped and swiped again, smashing the shield so hard against the knight it half severed his head. The near-lifeless body collapsed sideways, twitching. The stab in the chest was deep, but Bucko didn't think about it. He limped to the entrance and took off, clumsy but airborne. He flew up and on, scanning the horizon. He flew on and round and around and onward above the thick forests and the wide plains, not thinking but hunting, following his instincts for prey. A glint from the edge of the forest and Bucko was turning and straight for it. The men saw him coming and they scattered, abandoning the cart on which his books were sat, presided over by the smiling knight with the shining shield. Bucko got close and flamed the nearby ground. The horses reared in terror, whinnying frantically. One fell and broke the cart shaft, and both galloped away. The smiling knight hadn't moved. As Bucko landed, he almost seemed pleased. "I was hoping you'd be back, beast," he said, jumping down from the cart. "Back for your books, I take it." His smile widened. He tested the ground with his feet, scraping one sole then the other across the scrub. Satisfied, he hefted his sword and shield and walked towards Bucko. "Yes," Bucko replied. "I'm here for my books." The smiling knight stopped. "Good," he said, "because these books are mine, so take them from me if you can." He ran at Bucko, and Bucko gave him a half-breath fireburst, but the knight was sideways, running around quicker than Bucko could turn. He caught his breath and turned, limping, and the smiling knight stopped, closer now. "That's it, beast. Spend your fire." He walked closer. Bucko lumbered at him, and the shining shield was up and glaring the sun at Bucko's eyes. Bucko reared and swiped blindly, and Quickshield was close and stabbing. Bucko roared and swiped, and Quickshield was already away, laughing. Bucko blinked some sight back to his eyes and listened. Running feet, and Bucko reared and flamed the ground in front of him as he hobbled backwards. "Close, beast," said Quickshield from his left, "but not close enough." Bucko lumbered around, blinking his remaining sight back. Quickshield darted in, and Bucko reared and flapped and lashed his tail forward, and Quickshield glanced sideways of it and stabbed. Bucko roared and fell on his back and frantically lashed everywhere with limb and tail and rolled and was on his feet again. "That's it, beast," said Quickshield. "Tire yourself out." He ran at Bucko, but Bucko was ready for it. Roaring, he reared up and forward and feigned a swipe and collapsed his body on Quickshield as a sword pierced him. Quickshield screamed, and Bucko rolled off and away from him, careful of the sword stuck almost to the hilt in his chest. Quickshield, sweating and grimacing, tried to get up, but his leg was beyond useless. He collapsed back down. Bucko levered himself onto his haunches. Holding his weight on his bad leg, he managed to hook a foreclaw over the crossguard of the sword and tugged. The sword slid slowly out and clattered on the ground. "Well, beast, you've prevailed," said Quickshield. He looked down at his mangled leg and spat with disgust. "Why do you want my treasure?" Bucko asked, breathing carefully. Quickshield looked at him, contempt in his eyes. "It isn't your treasure, it's ours, all of it." "I've read the books," Bucko said. "The elder dragons lifted humans from the dust and gave them the fire and the word. We taught you to speak. We gave you great gifts and you betrayed us." "Gifts?" said Quickshield. "You didn't gift us the fire and the word. You taught us so we might better serve you." Quickshield paused for breath. "Look at your treasure. Look at those books. Who crafted them? Human hands wrought that gold. Human hands wrote those words. Human hands engraved those images. Not the claws of a clumsy monster." Quickshield paused again, breathing heavily. We were your slaves, and we freed ourselves, and we won't rest until you're all dead. Enough of this. Kill me and be done with it." Bucko said nothing. Watched. Thinking. Quickshield snarled. "Kill me and be done." The fire enveloped him. Bucko watched him twitch wordlessly, smelled the burning flesh, and thought. He felt no pity. He felt no malice, just clarity. A few brief flights and he returned his books and added the shining shield to his treasure bed, then collapsed upon it, bleeding, breathless, exhausted. He awoke in pain and hunger. He crawled from his treasure bed and managed to take flight. Fortunately, the day was hot and the heated ground buoyed him up as he glided in search of food. He came upon a herd of cows and a fleeing shepherd. He selected a cow, flamed, and devoured it. The clarity he had felt before hadn't left him. He didn't need to think, just act. He flew back to the body of Quickshield and took it to his lair. The bodies of the 3 knights he placed in clear view. No one approaching his lair could miss them. He scattered their helms and shields about the place. He scorched the earth of the approach, then limped into his cave and slept. Bucko recovered, slowly. His parents checked on him frequently, guarding him in turn until Bucko assured them he was all right. His wounds healed, although his shoulder ached on cold days. One day his parents came to visit, and they brought the rest of the family books with them, all for Bucko's lair. They shared a meal, and Bucko told them the story of Quickshield, the smiling knight. "Well done, boy. I'm very proud of you," said his father. "We both are, son," said his mother. "All the knights you fought, who came to you," said Bucko, "did you never talk to them?" "They were there to kill us," said his mother, "and our baby. Never occurred to us to stop for a chat." "Kill us, kill our baby, our treasure," said his father. "A dragon's treasure is a dragon's life," intoned Bucko automatically. "On that topic," said Bucko's father, "when are you going to find yourself a girlfriend?" "Huh?" Bucko smokily puffed. His father had an indulgent shine in his eyes. Bucko looked at his mother, who had turned her head to hide her enormous smile. Well?" said Bucko. He turned back to his father, who was now smiling too. "Let me tell you a story," said the older dragon, and Bucko settled down to listen.